Hi everybody, it's Mr. Kemple with another video. This time we're going to be talking about our last assignment for the semester, which is drawing a real-world space or room in perspective in either 1 or 2 point. We've been doing this in class so far, but we've been kind of just making up a space. So this isn't too different from that. There's just a few minor differences between drawing a real space. In some ways it's easier, in some ways it's maybe a little more challenging, but it's nothing you guys can't handle. The key is really picking the right kind of space to draw. And I'll explain a little more what I mean about that in just a minute. So to start off, you're going to want to make sure you have all of the correct materials and supplies for this drawing. So you will need a piece or two of the larger 12 by 18 drawing paper like we used in class. You do not want to do this on 8.5 by 11, and you definitely don't want to do it in your sketchbook. The more real estate, quote unquote, you have to do this drawing, the better. So I'm going to ask that everyone has a big piece of paper. So if you don't have it, you can either get some from me at school, or you can go buy some if you won't ever be on campus. And I provided links for you guys a while ago about places where you can buy the right size paper. You'll also need a pencil and a pencil sharpener if it's the kind of pencil that requires sharpening. If you have a mechanical pencil that you want to use for this, I totally am fine with it. You will probably have better results with a pencil that has thinner lead. These Ebonies are great pencils, but you've got to keep them sharp, and you've also got to watch how hard you press down on them. So if you're the kind of person that likes to really get dark with your lines and put a lot of pressure on your pencil, you might want to use a mechanical for this. Eraser, of course. I have two different types of erasers here. A click eraser for erasing smaller areas and lines, and a larger vinyl eraser. You guys have a click eraser that I gave you. It's not the same type as this, but it's similar. So, feel free to also use your kneaded eraser if you want to. That'll work too. You're going to need a straight edge. A ruler. I gave everybody a metal ruler like this, so you can use that. But also, if you have something like a triangle, here's another example of a triangle here. That'll work as well. You don't really have to have the numbers on there because you're not really taking measurements per se. You might measurements will be handy like when you're doing things like the tiles maybe, or if you have like some kind of pattern you're trying to draw for a floor tile or hardwood. But really, for the most part, as long as it's just a straight edge, you should be fine. All right, and then finally you'll need some photo reference. So you'll need your phones or tablet or some way to take some photos. I would like for you to work directly from observation on this, but having pictures does help. And if you're going to be doing part of this in class next week, you will definitely need photos of whatever space you're drawing. You don't want to be working without reference, okay? So, the actual process of starting this drawing is as follows. Step 1, obviously, you're choosing the space you want to draw. There's a couple of rules that I would like for you to observe. Number 1, this kind of goes without saying, but don't pick an empty or almost empty room. All right? Don't pick something that has nothing in it because, it's just not going to make for a very interesting drawing. And you're also, going to need to demonstrate to me that you understand how to draw objects and furniture and things in perspective, and you can't do that if you're in a room that only has like one or two objects. Okay, so definitely make sure that you're picking a room that is fairly well populated. Now, conversely, you also don't want to pick a room that has too much in it. So don't choose a space that's really cluttered or really messy, because it's going to be distracting. I don't expect you guys to draw every little single item on a shelf or every little, thing on a table. But I would like for you to include a few things, a few of the more major predominant objects in a kitchen or in a living room, and I'll show you some examples of that. So you want to find a balance between, nothing that's too empty or too cluttered or busy. Okay? And, it might mean, unfortunately for some of you, that you tidy up a little bit before you start to draw. So, like, let's say you're going to draw your bedroom. If your bedroom's a big mess, then clean it up a little bit first before you start to draw it, okay? Put some things away, clean off some spaces. You don't want it to look totally sterile and empty, but you also, don't want to have like a bunch of dirty clothes laying all over the place and, dirty dishes or whatever. I don't know how messy your rooms get, but, you want it to basically look lived in and populated, but not overly messy, because then that just makes it harder to draw. So pick a balance. All right. I have got my iPad here, and I'm just kind of showing you briefly some images that I took from different parts of my downstairs. Now you'll notice that there's a lot of detail on parts of this, okay? If I was going to draw this kitchen, I'm definitely going to want to include things like, all the cabinets, the refrigerator, some of the major items on the countertops, like, the crock pot, the toaster oven, things like that. Some of the jars on the island there. But I'm also not going to need to do things like draw every single magnet and piece of paper stuck on the refrigerator, all right? That's just too much stuff. So, things like that you can kind of ignore. Or, all these objects over here in the corner, like, you could pick and choose, maybe just draw a couple of them. All right, so that's what I mean by, kind of, you got to make choices. You got to make decisions about what you want to draw and what looks good. Here's a view from a 2-point angle. And again, that's just too much stuff on that refrigerator, so I wouldn't expect you guys to draw all that. Okay, or if you have like a really ornate pattern, like on like wallpaper or something, I wouldn't expect you to have to draw all that, like little flowers or something. If it's something like a grid and something simple, that's fine. But all right, here's another room. This is the living room. There's our dog Oreo sleeping on the chair. Okay, and again, there are, not too many objects. So I would maybe not need to worry about drawing the blanket on the couch or, all the dog toys in the corner. But, I could draw the remote control, maybe a book or two on the coffee table. That would be fine. That's just too much stuff. So I would maybe just draw the cushions and one pillow or two, but not all the other stuff. Okay? Too much stuff on that table. So I would probably scroll ahead to, I took some other pictures of the table after, see, with the tablecloth. So, and yes, that was a picture of me in a bunny suit from a Face app thing. So, there you go. All right, so you get what I'm saying. Okay, like that's a better table to draw, right? It's nice and clean. I put a tablecloth on it. So, feel free to definitely arrange the space, design the space so that it is optimal for drawing, okay? Once you have that space settled, you've chosen it, you've got a good angle, You've kind of experimented with some different angles and different directions. The next step is going to be doing some thumbnail sketches. So for this first one point drawing, I just did a couple of really simple thumbnail sketches. These probably took me about 15 minutes each. And there's really no details in there. I'm just trying to get accustomed to the space itself, the layout of the drawing, you know, where objects are, trying to get the spaces done, you know, fairly accurately. This is a drawing that's very rough. It's not perfect by a long shot. There's some mistakes here and there, but I'm just trying to get a feel for it. I did another one from a different angle, same kitchen, but from the right-hand side, looking towards the stove. Again, it's a one-point drawing, so you're looking directly ahead at the opposite wall. So you only have one vanishing point, one set of diagonals, okay? So not a lot of details there. You don't need them for this type of drawing. It's just a practice to kind of get accustomed to the space and just kind of a dry run, okay? So your final drawing should be much more detailed than this. But again, this is a really small drawing. I mean, if I pull back on this, you can see it's in the little black sketchbooks. So it's not very big. But it's enough to kind of, again, get a feel for what I'm going to draw. All right, so you're definitely going to want to do a couple of these. And again, each of these probably took me, I'd say maybe half hour total for both drawings. So don't spend a ton of time on them, just enough to get yourself, you know, more comfortable with the process. Okay? So once you have chosen your location, something that's not too empty, not too cluttered, and something that you've got a good angle, play around with different, you know, take photos from different sides of the room, see if one works better than the other. Then the next step is going to be starting on the final drawing. Okay, so we have our paper here. Let's go ahead and lay out some very simple parts of the drawing. All right, we're going to establish our horizon line and vanishing point very lightly on the paper. Then we're going to start building off of it with, you know, making sure the walls, floor, and ceiling, etc. are established. Okay, so we're going to start off here with step number 5. Once we get all of that stuff settled. So let's go ahead, take our pencil and our straight edge. Again, it can be a ruler or something else. This triangle is pretty long, but I think the ruler is a little bit longer. So if I can stretch all the way across the paper with this, that's probably better. So I'm just going to make sure, I want to make sure that I'm staying within camera frame, which I think I am. Okay. And I'm going to want this horizon line looking at the room and looking like where I am, like where my eye level is. I think if you make your horizon line either in the middle or just below the middle of the page, you should be fine. So I'm just going to very lightly, you know, make sure your straight edge is lined up. Very faintly draw that horizon line. Okay. Then you're going to draw a vanishing point. Now, the vanishing point could be directly in the middle, but if you are sitting off to one side or the other, you're going to want to maybe draw that vanishing point. Like, let's say I'm sitting a little to the left of the room. I'm going to draw that vanishing point a little bit to the left on my drawing. So let's say somewhere, not way to the left, but, you know, somewhere in there. Okay. Now I'm going to get a, you know, look at the overall shape of my room. And I'm going to draw that back wall. Now here's an important point. Make sure the opposite wall, 1 point, or if you're doing a 2 point, it would be that vertical line that intersects the horizon line. Make sure they aren't too big or too long, because the bigger you make that box or that line, the closer you are to the wall or to the corner and the less room you're going to have. So make sure that it's pushed back far enough. Like here, I'll show you a photograph since you can't see the room. Like, do you see how small, if you imagine the shape of that back wall, how small that is compared to the rest of the drawing? If that was too large, there wouldn't be enough room to include all this other stuff. So make sure it's fairly small on your paper so that you've got room to include the length of everything else in the space. So I'm just going to draw, a very faint, kind of approximate, kind of a rectangle. Something like that. And notice how that rectangle is containing that vanishing point, all right? I want the vanishing point to be inside this rectangle for a 1 point drawing, okay? And somewhere in there. Now, you might not get this perfect. You probably won't get it perfect right off the bat. You might need to change the size a little bit. But something like that, okay? So because I'm a little off to the left, that means my vanishing point is a little to the left of that box. Hopefully you guys can all see that. There's my vanishing point. Okay. So now I want to start establishing, my corners and everything. So line up your straight edge with the corners of your rectangle and draw a diagonal. You don't need to draw inside there, because that'll just mean more erasing you have to do later. Just, line it up, and from the corner outward, draw your diagonal. And then just like on your practice rooms that you've been doing, you see that pretty soon you start to see the walls, the ceiling, the floor all start to take shape. And as you do this, be looking at the space, be looking around you, look at the space itself, and kind of decide, am I getting the proportions right? Does the room itself look to be about that shape, or is it off? Because if it's off, now is the time to change it, before you have drawn, gotten too far into the drawing. Now's the time when you should erase and make some corrections or what have you, okay? So I think that looks pretty good. I mean, I guess I could technically, well, in all honesty, I was sitting at an angle here, so here's the other rule. Make sure that your verticals are really vertical and not slanted. That will also affect your drawing. Okay? And again, use the edges of your paper, like shore up the edge of the paper with your straight edge, and make sure that it's, pretty straight. Okay? Now, the next step is, again, very lightly, you're going to start blocking out some of these major objects. The counters, the table, the chairs, etc. And start, very slowly working from general to specific, all right? You're not going to have any details for a while. You're just going to be basically drawing lots of boxy type forms, just getting the layout correct. So I think what I'll do now is, instead of taking forever to draw all this stuff, I'm going to switch over to time lapse, and hopefully, you know, the drawing will take shape pretty quickly, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so switch over to time lapse, and then we will go over the next section. Okay, everyone. Let's do a quick review before we move on to 2-point. So, basically, we have done our 1-point drawing on our 12x18 paper. Got all of our materials together, pencils and sharpeners, erasers, straight edge, and photo reference, as well as direct observation. The location that I chose was my kitchen, because again, it had a good balance of objects. It wasn't too sparse. There were areas that were a little cluttered, but I was selective in, you know, I basically tidied up some parts of the, you know, the counter space and things like that. And also there's a few little areas where I selectively decided to not include like all the stuff on the countertops or on, you know, things like that. So you can be, you know, again, make some decisions, make some creative decisions and choices about what you're actually including. But you want to, you know, include a lot. You don't want it to be too sparse or too empty. I did some quick thumbnail sketches in the sketchbook to sort of practice and get an idea of the layout. Took some different photographs from different angles of the room to decide what was best. And then I got started drawing on the final version. I established the horizon line vanishing points very lightly on the paper. Drew the back wall so that it wasn't too large, so that I had room to include everything. And then I just started building up the drawing. Worked from general to specific, saved all the details till later. And I tried to put as much detail in the drawing as possible. Now you'll see here in a second, I actually worked on the drawing a little bit more after I turned off the time lapse. I fixed a few things that looked a little off, added some more details here and there, and I'll show you in a second what that is. So you definitely want to make sure that when you're doing these that you are, putting as much detail as possible in there, and try to make you want a nice, accurate, clean, tight, and detailed drawing. Again, little things like surface details, I'll go into that in a second. I left some of those out because they weren't important, but most of the details, as far as objects in the room and structural kind of details, I included those. And then finally, I used some of the techniques that we learned for structure and creating drawings for these objects. All right, everything that I just talked about, this is how I'm going to be grading your drawings. So craftsmanship and neatness. All right, did you consistently use a straight edge and a ruler? Did you use the correct size paper? Is your drawing clean, neat? Do you have a sense of line quality in the drawing, etc.? Also grading on the accuracy of your space. So you're going to need to be turning in some of your photo reference along with your drawing, so that I can look and see, how close did you get? I'm not going to check every little single thing, but I'm going to at least kind of, look at it and say, okay, did you get the basic details right on the objects? Did you get the spacing right, like on the furniture, things like that? Also, did you use perspective correctly? Are you correctly using your vanishing points, horizon line, etc.? Whether you're doing 1 point or 2 point. And finally, I want to see everything so that you're not just including the final drawing, you're also including your practice thumbnail sketches and some of your photos that you took. All right, so I want to, if you're missing any of those, I'll take some points off. Okay? So that's a quick review. Here's the actual drawing. Now, this is not still, in my opinion, 100% finished. I added a few things. As you can see, I felt that this area was a little too empty before, so I put another chair in there, worked it out. In perspective, I fixed some of the ceiling fan. I felt like that this blade on the fan was not quite at the right angle, so I adjusted that. Tightened up some more details, and I might still add more. All right, like I feel like here on this counter, I might fix a few things, add just a couple smaller objects that are actually there in the kitchen. I just haven't drawn them yet. And, just a few little items on top of the counters. Again, on the refrigerator here, I added some little pieces of paper and things that are, magnets that are stuck on our refrigerator. But again, I didn't feel the need that I didn't have to draw inside them. I didn't have to put details on them. Just having the shape is enough. Same with the tablecloth here. There's actually like a pattern on this tablecloth, like it's like a Christmas themed thing. I'm not worrying about that, all right? I'm just going to leave that be. So when I say that there are certain details you can exclude, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Like if there's a pattern like if you have wallpaper on your walls or, little kind of surface details, I don't feel like you need to waste your time on that. But as far as object details go, like for example, the detailing on the legs of the chair, here and here especially, this actually took me a little while to work out. Those are the kind of details that I feel like are important in a drawing like this, not necessarily the surface details. All right. There's also maybe a little bit more I'm going to do to the floor. So, there's still, I'd say this drawing is maybe 95% done, but I still want to go back and tweak a few more things. I might add a few more details in the molding, on the ceiling. I'll tweak the line quality a little bit more, maybe do a little more erasing on certain areas just to clean it up. Okay, but this level of detail is about what your drawing should look like. Okay, so hopefully that gives you guys an idea of what you need to have. Okay, so now, having said that, hopefully that makes sense to all of you. Now we're going to talk about 2-point. Okay? You can also decide to do a 2-point drawing if you want to. All right? So you guys know how to do a 2-point drawing because, again, you've been doing those on your practice rooms. So the difference is, instead of looking straight on at the opposite wall, you're now looking at the corner of the room instead. All right, you're going to want to probably have some extra paper attached to the sides to extend the vanishing points in the horizon line. Your horizon line will still be in the center of your paper or thereabouts. All the other rules that we just talked about apply. Everything from, these previous sheets here of, don't choose an empty corner. All right, empty corners are bad. Make sure you've got a good amount of objects. And if you're using the same room, you should have enough. Okay? If you need to draw some practice thumbnails, do so. And include those in your final. So you'll definitely want to do some practice thumbnails. Do it on 12x18 paper, etc., etc. All right, so I've gone ahead and attached some paper. Now I have some what's called newsprint paper. It's a very cheap kind of paper, but it's perfect for this type of thing. But in this case, I basically just had some extra paper. I just took an old drawing, a practice perspective drawing, and just cut it in half. And taped it to the back like that. All right. So now if I need to go wider with my vanishing points, I can go, a little past the edge of the paper. All right. Hopefully that you guys can see that and it makes sense. But again, it's just another 12x18 sheet with some extra paper attached on the sides. Now again, I would use, maybe something a little cheaper. I wouldn't take a perfectly good sheet of white drawing paper and cut it up. I just did it this way because it was a drawing I didn't need anyway. This was basically trash, so I'm just going to get recycle that a little bit. Okay. So I have looked at the room again from different angles and have determined. So I took, the pictures from one view. I took some 1-point views, and then I took some 2-point views. All right, so there's the difference. Again, 1 point is looking straight ahead. 2-point is looking at the corner. Okay? And I'm just sort of, I took several different shots of the rooms and, kind of decided on an angle that I like. All right. So that's something like that is what I'm going to go with from a different side of the room. The first one I was drawing from this, the 1 point I drew from this angle here, like looking in the doorway towards this wall. Now I'm going to go to the other side of the room and look at the corner. All right. just because I like that view. Again, there's plenty going on in this corner. I've got actually two corners I'm going to be drawing. But I've got the island, I've got the bookcase, I've got objects on the counter right here. There's plenty to draw. I've got this cabinet, so again, I have made sure that there's nothing empty. There's plenty here in this corner to look at. So that's what I'm going to be drawing. All right. So once again, the first thing I'm going to do is get my pencil. Establish where my horizon line is. That's good enough, I think. A little below normal. And now what I'm going to do, I'll slide the paper over a bit. I'm going to continue the horizon line onto my extra sheets of paper, like so. And when I look at my diagonals, I'm probably going to find that I'm going to need to continue the vanishing points onto these extra pieces of paper. Okay? Now I'm going to draw the angle. Let me find the picture. Okay. So I'm going to basically start with this corner right here. Okay? Now again, when I draw the line for that corner, I don't want it to be too long, because the longer that vertical line is, the closer I'm going to be, and I won't be able to include much in the drawing. I want to be able to include as much of this down here and up here and on the sides as possible. So once I choose to draw, I choose the spot I'm going to draw that vertical line at. Let's say here. Something like that, right? Not too long. This way I'm going to have room for, ceiling and floor. I could probably go up a little higher. Okay? And looking at the angle of the diagonals, I think the vanishing point on the left is going to be somewhere over here off the page. Can you guys see that? Yeah, okay. So I put one vanishing point way over here. The other one could probably fit on the page, but I'm going to extend it a little further out over here. Okay, so not too far past, but enough. Okay? So now I'm going to connect I'm running out of room here on my desk. Let me go ahead and move these other pieces of paper, because I'm going to have to be sliding this paper around a fair amount here. Okay, so put that over on the side. Okay, so now I'm going to line up my straight edge like so. I don't need to draw the line. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. That's the one trick about doing 2-point, is that there's going to be a lot of stuff happening, off screen. All right, so I've got my vanishing point lined up, and then from that top edge, I'm going to go out. And I'm just going to continue that line off the page. Well, not off the page, but to about there. I'm going to do the same with the bottom. Draw my diagonal out, then continue it on. Now again, I've got that secondary corner, right? I've got two corners. So I've got this one that I'm drawing this one right now, and I've extended my diagonal out. Now I've got another vertical I've got to draw here and then another one there. So I'm going to go ahead, draw that vertical now. Right? Now I'll get back to that. So I'm going to go ahead, line up the vanishing point on this corner and down here. And then continue it on above and below. Okay? Now, once again, I've got another corner I need to line up. Like so. This is a little more warped because we're getting a little closer to the vanishing point. This is a very short wall. Put another vertical here. Now, we're going to go back out again. Here, now I'm going to switch to my ruler because it's a bit longer. I think I'll have an easier time reaching it. Okay, I'm going to mark about there so I know where to put the ruler. If you have a yardstick or something, that's probably going to be easier if you have something like that. There we go. Now we're going to go back out again. And we're going to do the same with the bottom. Or you can get two rulers side by side. And there we go. You probably can't see that. It's a little off panel, but what I've got is, you know, if you guys can make out, that's where the vanishing point is, right there. So there we go. So now we've got our extra corner. Okay. So now we've basically got the skeleton of our drawing. Once you have established your vanishing points, horizon line, and like your corners, your wall, your ceiling, etc., now we can really start blocking out the drawing itself. So I'm going to start blocking out, you know, the countertops, the cabinets, tables and chairs, doorways, so on and so forth. Okay, so that will take place again, and I'll switch over to time lapse, and you'll see the drawing kind of develop more quickly, just like in the 1-point version, and we'll go from there. Then I'll kind of chat more once I've gotten the bulk of the drawing done. Okay, so again, quick review. We are doing now the 2-point version of the kitchen. This is how the 1-point turned out. Now I am basically standing over here in this doorway looking at this corner and then drawing it in 2-point. Okay? All right, so I'm going to switch over to, time lapse, and we'll have more to say after that.